Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 5 English lesson on adverbs. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts, grade 5. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of adverbs. So we said our chapter is adverbs. Our subject is English language arts. Grade 5. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of adverbs, it is to identify adverbs. So we are going to identify adverbs within our lesson or within our chapter today. All right. So when it comes to adverbs, right? Adverbs are words that tell us more about the verb, right? So adverbs are words that tells us more about the verb. And adverbs, right? It tells you how, when, or it even tells you where. So adverbs tell us how, it tells us where, and tells us when. So it's basically how something is being done, when something happened, where is it happening, right? That is adverbs. Because adverbs, they basically also describe or modify the verb, if we can put it like that. So we can say that adverbs describe or modify the verb. And if we look at some of the adverbs, right? Some of the adverbs we see that it tells us how, right? And adverbs that tell us how, they usually end in ly. So if we specifically have a word, right, an adverb, then that word will end in ly. Because firstly, we said an adverb, it's a word that tells you more about the verb. We can either say it modifies the verb, or we can say describes the verb. And we say that adverbs, they tell us how, when, where. And the adverbs that tell you how, these adverbs are usually end in ly. And if we look at an example, right? The question is, remember we said adverbs that tells us how, but now the question is, for example, how does she run? So you need to ask yourself, how does she run? And then we can say she runs quickly. So runs is our verb, but our adverb that tells us more about the verb is quickly. It tells us how she runs. So quickly, and as you can see, quickly ends with an ly. And then some of our adverbs we see that tells us when. And some of the adverbs that tells us when, it's like asking the question, when does he leave? So when does he leave? And if we were to say when he leaves, then we can say he leaves soon. So leaves is our verb. Soon tells us when he leaves. And once again, right, we said adverbs are words that tell us more about the verb. So remember, adverbs are not the verb. It tells us about the verb. And that is why we can identify the adverb and the verb within that sentence. And then we have adverbs, right? That tells us where. And if we were to look at the sentence, right, or the words or something that tells us where, right? The question is, where do they play? Where do they play? And then our adverb is outside because the sentence says they play outside, which means that our adverb is outside. Play is our verb, outside is our adverb that tells us where they play. So once again, we can say that adverbs they tell us more about the verb. We can either say adverbs they describe the verb or they modify the verb, right? But it tells us more about the verb. And when it comes to certain adverbs, right? Adverbs can either tell us about the verb or it can even just tell us about the another adverb or an adjective, right? But in this case, we are only for now talking about the verb, right? That it tells us about. All right. So these are adverbs that tells you more about the verb. These adverbs they tell us how. The adverbs they tell us when, and they also tell us where. And keeping in mind, right, when we identify adverbs, right, you will basically still see the verb within that sentence. All right. So if we look at adverb, right, let's look at this. Let's do this. We have adverbs. And of course, like, let's say we're going to identify a few words that we can identify together as being an adverb, right? That tells us more about verbs, right? So maybe we can say an adverb is, let's think of the word sadly. Sadly, I'm sadly writing this letter. I'm quickly doing something. Oopsie. Maybe quietly, I'm also doing something. Because now the question is, how are you um cleaning? Okay, you can't clean quietly, but yeah. But quietly, sadly, quickly, those are adverbs. Something that happened suddenly, these are also adverbs. Loudly, he chews loudly. Always, now, soon. These are all adverbs, right? There. That is but a few examples of adverbs. And remember the adverbs that ends with ly, those are adverbs that that tells us how. It tells us how something is being done, how you're doing something, right? And there is definitely a whole list of adverbs that we can look at, but these are just but a few examples of adverbs, right? And like we say, if it ends in ly, then those adverbs, then it means that it tells us how. So when it comes to adverbs, right, we have adverbs that tells us how, and we said those adverbs they end in ly. It's like secretly. Can even say the word secretly. I secretly planned a surprise party for my friend. I quickly completed my test. I slowly walked to school, right? I carefully picked up or carried the eggs. So those are but a few examples of adverbs, right? And like we say, adverb, it's a word that tells you more about the verb, or we can say it modifies the verb. And adverbs, they either tell you when, they tell you where, or they can even tell you how, right? And those are adverbs. All right, so now if we look at a few examples, right, where we are going to identify adverbs, right? Let me type it. Then we can say, I usually eat popcorn for a snack before my dinner. So let's look at that sentence, right? It says I usually eat popcorn for a snack before my dinner. So I'm going to leave that there like that. I'm going to write down another sentence and then we will identify what our adverbs are within that sentences. You can say I normally go to school by foot, meaning you walk to school. So I normally go to school by foot. We can say I frequently watch TV series or movies, meaning it often happens, right? And I sometimes read a book. So if we look at these four sentences, right, we are now going to underline the adverbs within the sentences. The first one says, I usually eat popcorn for a snack before my dinner. What is the adverb within that sentence? All right. And if we were to identify our our adverb within the sentence, we can say usually is our adverb. So usually is our adverb where we say I usually eat popcorn for a snack before my dinner. Remember, it's an adverb, right? So I usually, because that tells us how. I normally go to school by foot. What is our adverb within the sentence? I normally go to school by foot. Yeah, here's our word, our verb go, right? There's our verb go. What is the word that tells us about that verb? It says, I normally go to school by foot. So we need to select or identify the word that tells us about the verb. All right, and we can then identify our verb. Then we can say, I normally. Normally is our adverb. I frequently watch TV series. Here we have our verb, which is watch. What is our adverb within the sentence? I frequently watch TV series. We need to select the adverbs. All right. And then if you look at another one, oh, we didn't even identify that one. So we can say frequently is our adverb and it tells us how often we watch TV series. Yes, beautiful. Frequently is correct. Well done. And frequently is our adverb. So well done. And then the last one says, I sometimes read a book. So read is our verb. What is the adverb within that sentence? I sometimes read a book. So I sometimes read a book. We need to identify the adverb within that sentence. All right. Yes, well done. So sometimes that is our adverbs. Yeah, so the adverb is sometimes. So well done. I sometimes read a book. So sometimes is our adverb. I frequently watch TV. Frequently is our adverb, and that tells us about our verb, which is watch. I normally go to school by foot. Normally is our adverb, right? And go is our verb. And then usually is our adverb. Eat is our verb. Yeah, so sometimes is correct. Well done. So now we're going to A plus students.ca, and we're going to identify adverbs. Right? So we see that an adverb is a word that tells you more about a verb, and it either tells you how, it tells you when, or it even tells you where. And adverbs that tells you how, these adverbs usually end in ly. All right. And then we have our adverbs that, for example, that tells you when, where it says that he leaves soon. Adverbs that tells us how, they run quickly, quickly. And adverbs that tell us where, outside. So that is but a few examples of adverbs, right? But keeping in mind that an adverb is a word that tells you more about the verb, and it tells you how, when, or where. They're not giving us a sentence. All right, let's go to our test. So we're going to begin our test. So we're going to select the adverb that tells us about the verb within the sentence. It says, the crew digs underground. So the crew digs underground. What is the adverb within that sentence? The crew digs underground. So do we say it's option one, the? Is it crew? Is it digs? Is it underground? All right. And if we were to not crew, so not crew, because crew is a noun. Crew is a noun. A word that tells us about the verb. It says the crew digs underground. Where are they digging? So the question is, where are they digging? All right, so we can then say our adverb, right, within the sentence is underground. Yes, underground, because it tells us where they are digging. So well done. Underground is correct. The frightened deer pranced away. The frightened deer pranced away. So the frightened deer pranced away. We need to select the adverb within the sentence. And if we were to identify the adverb that tells us about the verb, right? And then we can say pranced is a verb. So pranced is the verb, right? It's like moving in high speed. Pranced is a verb, but what is the adverb that tells us about pranced? It says the frightened deer pranced away. What is the word that tells us about the verb? The verb is pranced. It's like to move in high speed. And if we were to select our adverb, then we would say away, because it tells us how this animal is, or this thing is prancing. Pranced away. So away is our adverb that tells us about the verb, which is pranced. Deer is a noun. So deer is a noun, right? Yes, away is correct. Well done. Gently clean the cut. Gently clean the cut. What is our adverb within that sentence? Gently clean the cut. How am I supposed to clean the cut? Or how should I clean the cut? That's the question you should ask yourself. How should I clean the cut? They say gently clean the cut. Clean is our verb. Now we need to select a word that tells us about clean. So now we need to select the adverb that tells us about the verb. So gently clean the cut. We need to select the adverb that tells us about the verb, and the verb is clean. So they say gently clean the cut. And if we were to select our adverb within the sentence, we can say, how are we going to clean it? Look at the word, look at this the four words, right? Clean is our verb, right? So if clean is our verb, because we have to clean the cut, then how are we going to clean the cut? That should determine our question, our answer. So to clean, right, is our verb. So clean the cut. And now the question is, how are we going to clean the cut? Not the. The is an article. So it says gently clean the cut. So now the question is, how are you going to clean the cut? Are you going to be rough when you clean the cut? If you need to clean somebody's cut or wound, are you going to be gentle or are you going to be extremely rough? So we need to say how you're going to clean the cut. Yes. So gently is our adverb that tells us about the verb. So the verb is clean. So that is why I was saying, if somebody were to clean your wound or clean your cut, how would they clean the cut? So they would be gentle so that they don't hurt you, right? So gently tells us how we're going to clean the cut. So well done. Gently is correct. We need to select the adverb that tells us more about the verb. The dog quivered silently. The dog quivered silently. Quivered is our verb. And if we were to look at our sentence, it says, the dog quivered silently. Quivered is our verb. But now, how is the dog quivering? So, how is the dog quivering? Or yeah, how? And if we were to select how the dog quivers, right? Then yes, well done. Silently is correct. It tells us how the dog quivers. Well done. The frog crept everywhere. This is adverb of place. It tells us where. So the frog crept everywhere. What is oh the fog, sorry. Is it the frog? The fog. The fog crept everywhere. Crept is our verb. So crept is our verb. And then everywhere is what is everywhere? Not what is everywhere. The fog crept everywhere. We need to select our adverb that tells us more about the verb, which is crept. Do we say the fog crept or everywhere? What is our adverb? And if we were to select our adverb that tells us about the verb, and then we can say the fog crept everywhere. Everywhere tells us about how it was crept or where it was crept, right? All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on adverbs, right? We said adverbs, they tell us about the verb, right? So adverbs that tell us about the verb, we can even say that it modifies the verb, right? So if you maybe have an adverb within a sentence, then you need to ask yourself like how, where, when, right? And that is how you'll be able to identify the adverb, right? So try to identify first the verb, then the adverb will tell us more about the verb. All right, yes. So this is now the end of our lesson. Grade 5, thank you very much for joining the class. And I really hope that you're going to have a good weekend further. Goodbye. Goodbye. You're welcome.